What's up, everybody? Coach Daisha here. And this week's hot topic is one where I'm in a different environment just so I can make sure I can show you all the goodness that is balance training. So please make sure you stick around to the end of this video where I'm actually going to go over 4 different movements that you could start incorporating into your daily routine right now. So let's go over balance. Let's talk about why it's so important, what your options are for balance, how often you can work on this, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get started. So the first thing I like to go over is what I call the bad news. Some of those morbidity and mortality numbers that I'm pretty sure that you've already heard about. Once somebody hits the age of 50, if they sustain a hip fracture, they are 50% more likely to not regain their former mobility, flexibility, etc., than where they were before the fracture. It's a pretty staggering number. The numbers get even more concerning when we talk about mortality. So between the ages of 65 and 80, if someone fractures their hip, there is a 15% chance within that year of death. And then that number actually escalates to 30% if we're talking about ages 80 and over. So balance training is one of the most important things we can do with osteoporosis to hopefully keep these numbers at bay. The great thing to remember about balance training is that if you do start balance training, you have a 50% increase in your chance of not having falls, fractures, etc. So we want to make sure that we maximize that particular number to our benefit. One of the things that I love about balance training is that it pulls in a concept that we call proprioception, which is just a fancy word for saying that you know where your body is in space and time at any given point. So when you have better proprioception or better balance, it really does minimize your chance of a fall or a tumble of some kind. The other thing that really increases when we work on balance is what we call our neurological resilience. So think about it. Throughout the day, we have a lot of predictable movements, a lot of things that we know we're going to do with our body. But what happens if we're walking down the aisle in a grocery store and we accidentally get bumped by somebody? How quickly can we react, recover, and not fall in that particular situation? That is what we call neurological resilience. And it's one of the best things that gets enhanced and improved when we work on our balance. Last but not least, people who feel like they have really, really good balance are the same people who feel very confident in the rest of their exercise training, whether it's strength, impact, etc. It is an automatic self-confidence booster, if you will, when we know that we have good balance and we've already minimized that fall risk. So if that hasn't already convinced you that balancing should be on your plate every single day, I'm not sure what will, but hopefully the rest of this video will help you understand. Now, for some people, it might be a good idea to assess where you currently are with your balance. And I really do encourage this because it lets you know where you're starting and where you're going, right? If we know where we're starting, then we have a really good idea of what our goals are, and then if there has been improvement over time. So first things first, what does good balance look like versus bad balance? Well, let's start with the bad balance first. Bad balance would be if we can shift our weight to one side, but we can't stay there for any length of time, right? So you try to put your weight on one leg, but you automatically have to put the other foot down within 5, maybe even 10 seconds. So when you are practicing this at home, see how long you can start with. If you slowly lift one foot off the ground and you can maintain that position for 5 seconds before you step down, then guess what? There's your baseline. Now you know where you're starting from, and now you know what it's going to look like as you improve. Now, as is the case with everything, if this is absolutely new to you, balance training that is, make sure you have some type of support nearby, whether that's a chair, a countertop, a wall, any steady surface or steady apparatus that's going to help you while you balance and practice. As I mentioned earlier, later in this video, I'm going to show you 4 simple balance activities that you can actually start incorporating into your daily routine. But for now, I want to talk about 2 ways that you can progress any type of balance movement. The first way is whether it's supported or unsupported. Supported meaning I'm going to use a chair, countertop, wall, something like that to help me as I practice my balance movement. Unsupported is obviously the opposite of that, where I'm not going to use any type of apparatus to help me. The next way to progress any movement is to make it either a static balancing move or a dynamic. Static simply means we are not moving during that particular motion, okay? So if we take a single leg stance here, hands on the hips, we're going to lift one foot off the ground. This would be considered a static balancing exercise. Now, let's say we decide to make that a little bit more dynamic. Now we simply have to move into it. So for this one, I could move into this by simply taking that one particular foot off the ground. I can take the opposite hand. So I'm standing on my right leg right now. I could take my left hand and I could slowly turn towards my right knee and then try to stand back up. Now I have turned this movement into what we call a dynamic balancing exercise. You will also find a lot of dynamic balancing movements in strength training, things like an overhead press from a standing or staggered position, okay? That would be considered a dynamic balancing exercise. So just remember, static means you're not moving at all. Dynamic means there is some sort of movement happening during that balancing activity. The last thing I want to go over before we get into the exercises is how often do we actually practice this? Well, that's the beauty of balance activities. Whereas we may not strength train or do impact activities every single day, you can work on your balance every single day. So feel free to use the movements that you see here at the end of this video and sprinkle them in whenever you want during your daily activities. Now, how do you know when you are improving? Well, that's simple. As we talked about earlier, you've got to have a baseline. You have to kind of know where you're starting. And then simply write down the time that you're able to maintain a particular balance movement. That is going to show you your improvement throughout time. Last but certainly not least here, if balance activities are extremely challenging for you and you are not seeing the improvement that you think that you should be seeing, please see your primary care physician and talk about this particular element of your fitness routine. There are certain conditions that make balancing extremely difficult. So if you think that that's applicable to you, please talk to your doctor and make sure that you're doing activities that will help you improve balance, but also honor any condition that you may have. All right, now let's get into the activities and the different exercises that I want you to start spreading into your week. Here we go. The first balance exercise I'm going to show you today is called the heel to toe stand. To start this move, make sure you've got a chair, countertop, wall, something nearby that you can use for balance. In order to start this move, make sure you've got your support first. We're going to place one heel, the heel of one foot, in front of the toe on the other foot. Shift your weight to where you feel like you've got even weight on both feet, and then you stand. Now, the base move is to use the support. As you practice this move, take your hand away from the support to progress the move. See how long you can hold. Aim for anywhere between 10 and 30 seconds. When it's time to switch, put your hand back on your support, and we simply switch feet. Once again, make sure you get your weight evenly distributed between both feet. Use your support when you need to. Take your hand away when you're ready to practice that balance and hold. The reason this particular move is challenging is because you're basically standing on a balance beam as opposed to railroad tracks like we do throughout the day. Our next exercise is called clock reaches. This can be done from a standing position or a seated position, so feel free to do whichever one makes the most sense for you. Easy thing to think of here is there's a clock on the ground. 12 o'clock is in front of you, 6 o'clock is directly behind you, and then we've got 3 or 9 on the sides. We're going to place all of our weight on one foot, and we're going to take the other foot, the toe of that foot, and we're going to place it at 12, 3, and 6, or 12, 9, and 6, depending on how you're looking at your clock, okay? So I'm going to use my hand for support, one foot in front to 12, tap it out to the side for either 3 or 9 o'clock, tap it back behind me for 6 o'clock, and then we come back up the clock, reverse it in the same direction we came. Now, of course, the base move is to use our hand on our support for balance, but when we're ready, we can always take that hand away. So we've got all of our support, all of our balance on the standing leg. Of course, you can reset, do this same thing on the other side. Remember, this particular movement can also be done from a seated position where you'll do the same thing. You'll reach one toe in front of you on the different times of the clock, and then you can switch. This is one where you can go for repetitions. So maybe do 12 repetitions on one side, 12 repetitions on the other. It's a great way to work on balance. Our next movement for balance are calf raises. Now, calf raises can be done in so many ways, so I'm going to go from the base move up to a more advanced version. All right, so let's use our support first. I'm going to turn towards my support. I'm going to make sure both feet are directly underneath my hips. From here, using my hands for my support, I'm slowly going to raise both heels off the ground and then slowly lower them back towards the ground. Now, once again, this is one where you can go for repetitions. So feel free to start low. You can do 10 repetitions of this each day, slowly working yourself up. Not only is this a great balance exercise, but it's also a great strengthening exercise for the calf muscles. So how do we progress this move? The first progression would be to take our hands away from our support. You can keep them by your sides. You can keep them in front of you. You can even take them overhead if you would like. The next progression would be use your support again, and now you can do single leg calf raises. So from here, I'm going to shift my weight to whichever leg I want to do the calf raise on. The other foot can either come directly behind me, or I can even place it behind that ankle. Once again, I'm going to use my support for this. Raise the heel off the ground, slowly lower it back down. Up and down. Now, how do we progress this move? Once again, taking our hands away from our support. And placing your hands wherever feels comfortable for you. Last but certainly not least is the single leg stand. And the main reason I left this for the last move is because this is the one that you can kind of practice and sprinkle into your day whenever you feel like it. I like to do this one when I'm actually brushing my teeth. It's a great way for me to get my balance in and not even really have to think about it. So let's obviously progress this move and show you all of the different options. Because it is a single leg stand, pick the leg that you plan to start with first, okay? Put all of your weight onto that particular leg, and we always start with using the support. So in this case, I'm using my chair. You could use a countertop, wall, etc. From here, the opposite leg can do whatever makes sense for you. That toe or foot can come in front of you. It can come directly out to behind you, or it can come out to the side, whatever feels comfortable. A lot of people simply like to take the knees where they're close together and the foot is behind them. Here we're using the support to help us with our balance. Hold for as long as you can. Then from there, we progress to the hand away from the balance. Once again, holding this for as long as you can. Aim for 10 to 30 seconds. If you ever need to put your hand back down on the support, that is perfectly fine. The last progression of this is going to be the most challenging, and that is hand away, and now we close our eyes. Our vision is one of the number one proponents, or components, I should say, of balance. So you will find that closing your eyes in this position is very challenging. So I encourage you to make sure you have something nearby if you try the eyes closed progression. So once again, let's go over that again. All of your weight on one leg. Base move is going to be hand on support. The next progression, hand away from the support. And the last progression is to slowly close your eyes and see how long you can hold before you need the support again. And the 4 moves I demonstrated today are very simple balance activities that you can sprinkle in throughout your day, and you can do these particular movements every single day. Some of them you might do for repetitions, and some, as you can see, you would simply hold for time and see how long you can do that. There are a plethora of other ways that you can work on the balance of your lower body, but these are just 4 that you can start with to sprinkle in throughout your day. I hope you found these videos helpful.